Well, good morning, everyone. Andrew Kircher here with Port Huron Museums. I hope everyone's having a great Saturday morning. I am coming to you live here from just outside SC4. I bet many of you probably recognize the building here behind me. But I had a great experience this morning. I wanted to share with everyone. I know it's been a little bit since we have done a live video. We've been really doing quite a few of our live, instead of live videos, we've been making some not too long ago with Grant Smith. If you haven't checked those out, sometimes I know Facebook, the algorithm doesn't like to push them out as much, but we're doing our best to get those out. But I figured I'd do a quick live video. I was down again here at, as you can see, the Clara Mackenzie building, which is a great kind of 1950s, 1960s building on SC4's campus. I know we've walked through all of SC4's campus before, but did something really cool today. I'm going to turn the camera around. We were today inside at they have both the Experience Center, which if you've never been to, it has a lot of natural history. There's actually a woman here with a red-tailed hawk live, which is really exciting. It's kind of like a falconer with it perched up on her arm. That was really cool. I found out the difference between a falcon and a hawk. And anyway, also in the Experience Center here, they also have the Challenger Learning Center, which takes up, I think, most of the basement here. It was kind of actually a little disorienting downstairs. You can see here's a sign here, Challenger Learning Center. I think they're here till about 2 o'clock today. They're kind of doing an open house because it's brand new. And very, very exciting. So this is, I got to meet, one of my favorite things to do. I got to actually meet and talk with a couple of astronauts today, which was really fun. They've got some astronauts visiting the area, talk with them about their experience on the space shuttle. I did 4 spacewalks in one trip, and there was Dottie was the name of the other astronaut, and she went up on, I think, Discovery. She was telling me. Here you can see the Experience Center, the Challenger Learning Center. They've got their own vehicle, which is pretty cool. It's going to be a whole thing for school groups coming in. I think it's kind of aimed at like 7th, 8th grade science curriculum, but they do all sorts of different levels. They're going to be opening up for some kind of like community day stuff in the not too distant future. But they're getting their feet wet right now, all here in the Clara Mackenzie building. It was really, really cool. So I figured I would tell people a little bit about that and maybe share a little bit of my walk back towards the museum. There's a couple cool buildings on the way. I know we've talked about many of them many times before, but some folks may not have caught those. I'll kind of just see what's going on. It would be amazing to think, this is the 1906 Port Huron High School building. Or excuse me, 1907. You can actually see the date right there in the corner. This beautiful kind of Renaissance Revival high school. That would be... All right then, I guess I needed to get going in a hurry. And it's this amazing Renaissance Revival building. It'd be amazing to talk to the people who are building this and tell them that someday next door there would be a whole museum dedicated to space flight, and there would be actual people who had been into space. Pretty amazing, at least to me. It blows my mind to think about that anytime. I remember visiting one of the Smithsonian institutes and getting almost a little choked up at seeing a piece of the Wright Flyer they had taken to the moon. But it's kind of like a space shuttle simulator. There's a whole mission control, so everybody gets a chance to talk people through. I know I had sat at a station, and my specific mission was all about fine-tuning the solar panel array. So it was a really neat chance and opportunity to do that. So between SC4 and the museum, we have got a lot covered because they have not only kind of natural history, so they've got replicas of dinosaur fossils, they have some real fossils, mastodon bones, that sort of thing, prehistory. Of course, at the museums, we do our regular history, our museum history, so the written documented era, and now they've got this space shuttle simulator. It's maybe taking a look into a glimpse at the future. We'll cross the street here. Figure another thing we will take a look at once we get up on the bridge, we'll be able to see some of the work they're doing on the seawall down this way. Because I know a lot of people watch these videos from outside of the community, so they might not know like exactly what's going on the ground unless they see a news article about it or something. They're just walking around. But yeah, it was amazing to get to talk and meet with some real-life astronauts. If you get the chance, like I said, they're going to be there for a few more hours. You should definitely stop by, meet those people, talk to them. I know the one astronaut I was talking to was a Navy test pilot, which was cool enough on its own. I was talking to him a little bit about that experience. Asked him his opinion of what, if we should go to Mars next or go back to the moon. And he seemed to think that, you should really work on the moon, make sure all of your equipment's working right before making that big step to the red planet. So we'll see. It's kind of neat to get, insight from somebody who really knows what they're talking about. He was also telling me that I asked him how long it took his body to adjust to zero gravity. He said his first space mission took a couple days. He was up for 2 weeks. It took a couple days before he was used to it. But by his third or fourth space mission, he is very quick adjustments. Body just kind of knew what to do with that zero gravity. So I don't know, what do you guys think? Would you ever want to go into space, experience zero gravity? I thought maybe someday, if I live long enough, it might be accessible. It's becoming more and more accessible. They've got, Jeff Bezos offers those space tourism flights. I don't think I'll afford one anytime soon on a museum salary, but it'd be cool, right? So anyway, we're walking across. I saw a sure sign of spring. The Military Street Bridge was open a little bit earlier today. Of course, walking across the 7th Street Bridge here, and we can see the seawall work they've done right down that way, kind of the zebra parking lot, where they have been replacing the seawall and completely redoing the parking lot down that way. So a little bit of work, sure sign of spring. We've got some other news in the works. Another reason we haven't done quite as many live videos. I've got work coming up. I've got some contacts made over at the Federal Building. I'm hoping to secure us a live tour inside the Federal Building that we've talked plenty about before. So that should be pretty exciting. When and if we can put that together. So other things going on, of course, everybody knows the museums are free this year. All of our sites offering free admission. So the way the grants worked out, there is still a small charge at the lighthouse for the guided tour. The guided tour is what you actually have to go on if you want to climb the lighthouse tower itself, which I know isn't ideal and can be a little confusing for folks, but hey, we're doing our best. Walk across here as quick as we can. By any cars. But the weekends, 10 to 5, all of our satellite sites are open. Of course, the Carnegie Museum is open Wednesday through Sunday. We take Mondays and Tuesdays off until Memorial Day, which is coming right up, actually. At Memorial Day, we go to 7 days a week. So one of the things I always think of when walking by the building over here that we're looking at, this guy was built, I think in the 1898, 1897, right about there. The neat thing about it was built by the telephone company for telephone company use. That front room was actually a little lobby for all of the switch operators. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was the very first telephone building built specifically for that purpose. We've got a couple examples of things like that. The other one's the Citadel, which is, of course, the Salvation Army Church downtown. Today it's home of, Red Kettle Coffee. But when the Citadel was opened in 1904, it was the first purpose-built building for purpose-built church for the Salvation Army. We're also looking at our Port Huron housing right over here. We've got Peru on the north side. I believe this is Desmond on the south side of the river. These are both the senior housing. It's part of the Port Huron Housing Commission. All put up in 1968. It's part of that big drive in the late 60s, the war on poverty, and a huge growth in things like public housing that sprung up all over the country. And Port Huron was no exception to that. So it may not have the most frills or architectural details, but this kind of subsidized housing is pretty important to have in an area, especially for, you know, at-risk seniors. Of course, there's family housing down in like Dull Hut at the south end of town. There's also Gratiot Village, but these apartments are pretty neat. Good example of kind of institutional architecture, you know, when they're looking for something that's very simple and cheap to throw up, but efficient. Obviously, they've been here over 50 years, so they're not, maybe cheap isn't the right word. Cost effective, perhaps, because I think cheap implies that, you know, they're shoddy, but public housing did sometimes have this poor reputation in some areas. You think about places like Chicago or New York City, where there are hundreds of thousands of people who live in these high-rise towers for public housing that maybe suffered a little bit of reputation because of all the government regulations that went into building them. But the housing here, at least I hope so, is pretty good. We don't get a ton of complaints on the Housing Commission. Of course, St. John's Church over here. Beautiful German-style church. It's been updated a couple of different times. You know, in all my years in Port Huron, this is one church that I've never been in. So maybe I'll have to find a service sometime to check out the inside of St. John's. But I'm hoping, this is another bit of news, we actually have a new employee at the museums. His name is Ian. Hoping to do an interview with him shortly so everybody can kind of meet him. Ian is a seminarian, so he's very knowledgeable about church history. He has a master's in theology. And we're hoping to do kind of a joint church tour together where we can talk about some of the churches, some of the different, maybe differences in denominational belief, and a little bit about how that might impact the architecture of the building itself. I hope that's something that maybe people would be pretty interested by, because certainly right here in this neighborhood we could walk to at least half a dozen churches in just a couple of minutes, very easily. There are so many. Other things that are coming up at the museums, if you haven't seen, the Mother's Day tea, or after Mother's Day tea, I should say. Pretty cool. You can get your ticket, give it to your mother or mother figure on Mother's Day, and then the tea itself is the following weekend. Everybody's so full, all the restaurants are full. This is a great chance to do something that's maybe a little less stressful for just after Mother's Day. And of course, we're almost back here in another church. There's the First Congregational over there, which is Dr. Schwedo's office. They're doing a little bit of work, little by little. Always see things heading in and out. It's now like, I think, the Port Huron Surgical Center or Medical Center, something like that. But kind of a neat setup there. Good repurpose of a historic building. And you know, there's one other place I want to look at while we are out walking before I need to get back to my car. And here, we're going to walk just a little bit further down 7th Street, because I saw on Zillow the other day that there's a house up this way for sale. It's actually an apartment complex. The Caledon Apartments. And this apartment complex that is for sale, I think they're asking something north of $500,000. Anyway, but it's pretty enormous. It's actually one of the old Sanborn homes. I think probably the current exterior that we're going to see dates to the 1870s. Although one of the things that I want to do a little bit of research on, I'm very interested in, is they claim anyway on Zillow and then the real estate listing that the original date of the house is 1840, which would be very, very old for around here. Not impossible, but very old. Of course, we have the Ballantyne home here. Wonderfully restored by the Mosses and the current residents. Done a very good job of upkeep. French Gothic revival from probably the 1860s or so. Now, sign says 1850. It's kind of hard to pin maybe an exact date on the home. And of course, we also have the old Victorian Inn, which was the work of the late excuse me, sorry, it's really dry outside. This was the work of the late Lynn Sikori and the Sikori family. Unfortunately, if you didn't follow, Lynn passed away back in January. Had a memorial service for her recently. She did such an amazing job for historic preservation in the city. And then Chris Troy did quite a bit of work here as well. Again, it's back to a single family residence. But right over here, this guy in white with the Second Empire style roof. That is the house that is for sale. And something like 13 apartment units. I know there's always kind of more work to be done. We're going to cross the street here. So that's French Gothic Revival. This is Queen Anne for sure. Kind of some of the best example of Queen Anne architecture. One of the best in the city, certainly. But over here, this is Second Empire. Probably the nicest Second Empire, although there's a Second Empire over here. One of the ways you can tell a Second Empire home is by the mansard roof, which is the roof that kind of comes down at a very steep angle. And it's usually kind of an entire floor. It's almost a vertical roof pitch. So let's take a look here. So again, there's 13 apartments. I know the top floor is still maybe under renovation. The front porch needs a little bit of help. I know that's something that the Historical Commission has been on. This is part of the historical district. There's a lot that I think could probably be done here if somebody had the money and the inclination to turn it back into a historical gem. But it has been apartments for a very long time, the Clarendon Apartments, all the way back into the 1890s. And before that, this entire block was referred to as the Sanborn block. So unfortunately, I think a lot of the architectural detail, we can see there's a couple doors hanging out in a window up there. A lot of maybe the finer architectural details have been covered up by some of the vinyl, which does make maintenance a little bit easier. Can sometimes protect what's underneath. We'll come all the way around to the side. We can see stairs, kind of a flat part of the roof up there. So probably another part, an area for some egress. And we can also look all the way up there where there's some plywood. I think that's where they were doing a lot of the gutting up on that third floor, which was probably originally a ballroom, as many of these homes were. But you can see there's the main floor kind of starts down a little bit. There's some steps down that way. So yeah, kind of a more modern fire escape that probably would not have been there back in the 1870s when it was originally built. So according to the listing, I think about half the units are currently occupied. Like I said, the price, if you've got about $500,000, could be yours. Could be a lot of work. It's certainly a massive home, and there are still some of those great details. You take a look at like the little brackets up at the top there. I think it needs a cupola rebuilt right up here. I think would cap that off very nicely. So certainly a gem. You can still see some of the ornate carving. Oops, won't focus on my finger up that way. So that's kind of like the boot scraper right down here. So there's a little bit of kind of historical news, as it were. I know that house is for sale. You can check out the listing, and who knows? Like I said, if you're a millionaire, you want some hot tips on restoration, I'd be happy to work with you. If I won the lottery tomorrow, it would be a project I'd love to take on, because what a gem in our community. The entire Sanborn block there. The crazy thing is, that was not even the biggest house on that block. Going back to about 1922, about 100 years ago, a little before, the largest home would have been under St. Joseph's Church. Underneath the church there was kind of the patriarch of the Sanborn family, who had come from New York, I believe it was. So there was actually a third house in between those two, which unfortunately was torn down. It was the rectory for St. Joseph's Church, and I think it was a rather contentious or heated historic district vote, and by one vote they were granted permission to tear it down. I know they looked for quite a while to see if they could find somebody who could move the historic home off the lot, but moving a home sometimes just not practical. It's so expensive, even if you get the home for free. Abdullah, some people are still living there. Yeah, I think about half of the apartments are rented out there, but I know they are doing work in quite a few of the others as well. So sadly, that one in the middle that was torn down, I guess it was maybe originally intended for a parking lot, something like that, but we didn't even get one of those. So kind of the last residents on that block, that back in the 19th century, they were referring to as the Sanborn block, because the Sanborn family that was living there at the time. So there you have it. There's just a mini little walking tour, mini update on that for sale. You can check it out if you Google, the address, or just go out to Zillow. You should be able to see the listing. There weren't any interior photos at the time. Maybe they've updated some. It'd be nice if they did. If they get some, I'll be sure to try and share those with folks, because I'm always interested in the inside of homes. I'm working actually with a couple of realtors as we speak, so I'm looking around to make sure I don't get hit by a car. Working with a couple of realtors to try and bring you some inside historic tours, to look inside some of these homes as they come up for sale, because hey, who doesn't like looking inside an old house? But yeah, I'm back to the museum. I got a couple things to do this afternoon. It's technically my day off, but I was down at like I said, that Challenger Learning Center opening. Figure from one cultural institution to another, not me, like the museum, we need to welcome them to the area. It's really exciting. Us museums have to stick together for sure, so it's great to have SC4 and all of that that's going on opening up. Hopefully, if you get a chance, go check that out today. And of course, you can always check out our sites as well. They're open and free admission, which is very, very exciting at all of our sites. Let me tell you, we have been doing fantastic. There have been some phenomenal numbers that have been coming through with that free admission so far this year. And we're not even in to May, which is typically when we opened. It was only last year that we opened in April, a month early. I think that's going to be here to stay, because people clearly wanted it. So check that out. Check out those events coming up in the near future at the museums. That after Mother's Day tea. I know my brother and sister are watching. I have to tell them it's too late. I already bought my mom and my grandma tickets. So sorry, Ellie. Sorry, Evan. I already scored those for mom and grandma. So they'll be there. Hopefully some of your folks will be there as well. And until next time, enjoy the history here in your own backyard. And it's Andrew Kircher from Port Huron Museums signing off. Take care.